We've got some exciting news about the Las Vegas Raiders. They're gearing up for a game against the Cincinnati Bengals. Even though the Raiders are currently at 2-6 and it seems like their playoff hopes might be fading, there are still reasons to be optimistic for this matchup. First off, there's a change at the center position. Andre James won't be playing, which gives us a chance to see Jackson Paris-Johnson step up. While this isn't a long-term change, it's a great opportunity for him to show what he can do. The Bengals have struggled with their run defense, so the Raiders might find success on the ground. Now, it won't be an easy game. The Bengals are a solid team and are looking to bounce back with a few wins to get back on track. But having Jackson Paris-Johnson at center is a key development. He's looked good at guard, but he really shines at center. In just 14 snaps last week, he made several impressive plays. I believe he has the potential to be one of the best centers in the league if he continues to perform well. From what I've seen, when he takes the field, the Raiders' offensive line improves significantly. A good pocket is crucial for the quarterback. When defenders are coming at him, if he can't step up in the pocket, it can lead to trouble. Paris-Johnson helps keep the inside pressure off the quarterback, allowing him to make plays more comfortably. With Paris-Johnson starting at center, and with Dylan PM returning to play right guard, this could be the strongest offensive line the Raiders have put together this season. They have a solid mix of players that can really move the ball. On the injury front, Dylan Farm is questionable, but expected to play. Robert Spain might not make it due to a knee injury, which means Divine Diablo will be leading the defense. Other linebackers like Tommy Eichenberg and Amari Gaynor may step up, and Gaynor has shown promise earlier this season. The Raiders' defensive line has improved, generating good pressure on quarterbacks, and I expect that to continue against the Bengals. For those in Nevada or California, remember that the game starts at 10 a.m. this week, which is great for getting the game out of the way early so you can enjoy your weekend. Despite the challenges, I think the Raiders have a real shot at beating the Bengals, especially since Cincinnati will be missing some key players like Orlando Brown Jr. and T. Higgins. Before we dive deeper, let's take a moment to look at my underdog picks for this week. We're now a few games into the season, so we have a good idea of which teams are performing well and which aren't. Here are some of my top picks. First, I'm going with Jalen Hurts to throw for more than 214 passing yards. He's up against the Jacksonville Jaguars, who have one of the worst pass defenses in the league, allowing an average of 271 passing yards per game. Another team struggling against the pass is the Minnesota Vikings, and Joe Flacco is set to start his first official game for the Colts. He's ready to come out and throw the ball around. We know that Joe Flacco has some interesting stats from the last couple of games he played when Anthony Richardson was hurt. He threw the ball a lot, 38 and 44 times. He struggled against the Titans, but that's understandable since they have the top pass defense in the NFL. However, he lit it up against the Jaguars, throwing for nearly 360 yards, who have one of the worst pass defenses. This week, Flacco is up against the Minnesota Vikings, who also have a poor pass defense, allowing an average of 263 yards per game. I expect Flacco to throw the ball a lot again, and because of that, I think Michael Pittman has a great chance to score at least one touchdown. Touchdowns can sometimes come down to luck, like getting stopped just short of the end zone, but I believe Pittman will find the end zone. Speaking of quarterbacks, Derek Carr is back with the New Orleans Saints, and they're pushing for a playoff spot. Carr loves to throw the ball, and the Panthers' pass defense is among the bottom 7 in the league. I'm confident Chris Olave will rack up at least 66 yards against them. Now let's talk about Bo Nix. I'm taking the higher on his combined passing and rushing yards, set at 242. He's been a standout on the ground, with games of 75 and 61 rushing yards recently. With the Ravens expected to score a lot, Nix should be able to reach that number against a defense that's struggled. For this, I usually don't bet $25, but I feel good about these picks, so I'm putting down that amount for a chance to win $810. If you think you can do better, check out my link in the comments to make your own picks, and feel free to tag me on Twitter so we can chat about them. Back to the Raiders. The Bengals will be missing some key players this week, which is a positive for Las Vegas. Orlando Brown Jr. is a solid tackle, and T. Higgins is a great wide receiver, so their absence should help the Raiders' defense. The Bengals are 3-5 for a reason. Their offense hasn't been impressive. They do have Jamar Chase, a fantastic receiver, but without Higgins, their options are limited. They also have Jermaine Burton, a rookie who has potential but isn't quite there yet. If Orlando Brown is out, Cody Ford will likely step in at left tackle, and they have another rookie, Darius Mims, who has struggled this season. This should allow the Raiders to create pressure against their offensive line. While the Bengals have some strong players, like B.J. Hill and Sam Hubbard on defense, overall, their offensive line is average. This gives the Raiders a good chance to find success on both sides of the ball. Although the Raiders' offense isn't perfect, having Paris Johnson at center and a solid offensive line can help them perform better. Now on to some team news. The Raiders signed wide receiver Rashid Keaton to a 2-year contract and moved him to the active roster. He showed a lot of potential in training camp and preseason, making big plays. This move means he'll have more opportunities to contribute, possibly even in punt returns. Lastly, there's talk about the Raiders potentially standing pat at the NFL trade deadline. Some fans want the team to trade away players like Kolton Miller and Max Crosby, but I disagree. The Raiders have some valuable players, even those on 1-year contracts. For instance, Malcolm Butler has upside, and while he might fetch a late-round pick, someone like Kuhn has real value even if he's currently injured. There's been some talk about whether the Raiders should consider trading players like Trayvon Mullen and Nate Hobbs, especially since they're on 1-year contracts. Some people argue that if they're not planning to keep these guys, they should trade them and focus on the future. But I don't agree with that perspective. In his article, Vic Taper suggests that it doesn't make sense for the Raiders to tank this season. Let's face it, the Raiders aren't a bad team. Sure, some might say I'm being biased, but the fact is they've lost games due to a variety of factors, not because they're lacking talent. The Carolina Panthers, on the other hand, are struggling as a team. The Raiders have playmakers like Hobbs, Jones, Max Crosby, Christian Wilkins, and Malcolm Kuntz. Even players like Adam Butler can hold their own against most guards in the league. Offensively, Kolton Miller is solid, and DJ Glaze has shown promise. You have young talents like Paris Johnson, Jacoby Myers, and Trey Tucker who, while not necessarily game changers, can definitely contribute. If the Raiders start trading away these players, it sends a negative message to potential coaches next season. They could think the team is in a rebuilding phase when in reality, the defense has shown it can be strong, especially if key players are healthy. A good offensive coordinator could step in, find the right quarterback, and see how much talent is already on the roster. Looking at teams like the Carolina Panthers and the New Orleans Saints, you see what happens when a team doesn't have good players. The Saints are stuck with big cap issues and aging stars. In contrast, the Raiders have a strong position with their cap space and a good mix of players they can retain. Tom Telesco has the final say on decisions regarding these players. The Raiders are in a good spot, and it would be a mistake to trade key players like Kolton Miller, especially since finding a top-tier left tackle is incredibly challenging. It's rare to have the opportunity to draft someone like Christian Darrisaw, so trading Miller could leave the team in a tough spot if they need to replace 2 tackles in the future. Miller isn't a top-paid offensive tackle, and he's still a valuable player, ranked among the top 15 in the NFL. The Raiders should focus on keeping their core intact rather than making trades, especially when it doesn't make sense to acquire players unless there's a significant opportunity. I'm not looking to trade Kolton Miller or Max Crosby. I'd consider moving Jacoby Myers if the right offer came along, but I don't want to dismantle the team for draft picks. What do you all think about the Bengals game? Would you trade anyone if you had the chance? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to thumbs up and subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next video.